Rabbi Shamloff is a native Chicagoan, where he spent most of his life until making Aliyah in 2009 with his wife and three daughters. After high school, Rav Zev attended Yeshivat Shalavim in Israel for 2 years. After returning from Shalavim, he attended Northeastern Illinois University for college and graduated in 1980 with honors with a degree in business. At the same time, Rabbi Shandaloff attended the Hebrew Theological College, where he received both his smicha and his BHL, Bachelor of Hebrew Literature, in May of 1980. After spending 17 years in business in the field of purchasing, he became rabbi of Congregation Kehillat Jacob Beth Samuel in Chicago in May of 1999, where he served until June 2009. Rabbi Shandaloff also taught in Hillel Torah North Suburban Day School for 6 years, as well as serving as the teacher of the junior year Talmud honors class at Ida Crown Jewish Academy from 2003 to 2009. Rabbi Shandaloff served 3 years as the president of the Chicago Rabbinical Council, is the former chair of the Rabbinic Action Committee of the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago, served on the advisory board of Yeshivot B'nai Akiva, the Board of Education of Erie Crown Hebrew Day School, and of Hannah Sachs, and served as member of the Rabbinical Council of America's Executive Board. In addition, while in Chicago, Rav Zev served as an ad hoc committee for prevention of child abuse, which he helped to found. After making Aliyah to Malay Adumim, he began to work for Talalim Educational Experience, a company specializing in educational tours for groups coming to Israel. In 2010, he returned to his roots as an educator and taught in Yeshiva Malay Adumim for the past 8 years, has taught at AMIT Boys in Malay Adumim. He serves as a Rav in the community and lectures, gives shiurim, and teaches students privately. He has published 3 books, and he is married to Andy and has 3 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, and 2 granddaughters. Now, Rabbi Shandaloff.
The introduction took most of the time I had. I want to, first of all, most importantly, to thank Beth and Melissa and all those, all those who were involved in setting up the evening, and also, of course, the Livingston family for opening their home. Thank you. You heard this one. Yes, I'm sure it is. And all those who are here tonight and those who are joining us on Zoom. I want to just tell you something that's going to sound like I'm making it up, but I really mean it. I'm here in Chicago for less than, basically, my wife says it's less than a week, for about a week. And most people, they come in, see family and friends. They're not, their goal isn't to come and speak somewhere because it's taking away an evening, as Beth mentioned. But I was more than thrilled to have the opportunity to share with you what she's called the insider's view of what AMIT does in Israel, and specifically in Malay Adumim, and specifically at the school that I'm at. So it was like, to me, this is a labor of love. This is like coming to see family, besides seeing everyone I haven't seen here this evening in many years, which is also very nice. I want to divide the evening to 4 parts. I was asked to speak for 4 hours. So 4 parts. I want to give you, because a lot of people have been asking me, and I said, I'll tell you. So just like 2-minute thumbnail sketch of what's going on in my life right now, our lives. I'm going to give you the insider view of AMIT Malay Adumim, called AMIT Eitan in Malay Adumim. I'll explain. Then the connection to the first book, well, it's actually the second one I came out with, but the first book of Piyutim, what it is, what it has to do with AMIT, and then read one Piyut, explain it, and then to talk a little bit about the book that was born here in Chicago. So kind of called full circle. We'll come to all that. Tov. We live in Malay Adumim. Last week was 13 years exactly. We made Aliyah on the English calendar. When I return on Thursday in Israel, that'll be our Hebrew anniversary of Aliyah, 13 years. It's gone by very fast. Baruch Hashem, it's been an amazing experience. The person you see standing in front of you, those who knew me, and knew me especially years ago as rabbi in the shul, and even before that, some of you may know me just a little bit longer. Yeah, there are people in this room who know me for almost 60 years, right? How they're 50, I don't know how that happened. I'm really not exactly the same person who I was. And hopefully, thank God, in a much more positive way. I don't speak the same way. I don't learn the same way. I don't think the same way. The experience of being in Israel has altered me, us, and me greatly. And again, hopefully in very positive ways. And if one day we have time to discuss it, you could always go on, I have a YouTube channel. Whoever thought I have a YouTube channel? Because at the beginning of COVID, so all my shiurim that I give ended up on, I did post them all, did them on Zoom and then uploaded to YouTube. But there's one on YouTube, for those of you who are not aware, that 9 years ago, I changed, was my best religious decision of my life. Moved from being Ashkenazi to Sephardi. How can it be done? Is it halachically okay? How you do it? What's it done for me? It's on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's its own 45-minute talk. I did it after many years, finally not broke down, but I finally agreed to explain to people why I did it and what the impact has been in the family and in my life. Okay, the family, thank God, is doing great. Baruch Hashem. One daughter living with us in Malaya Dumi, not with us. 2 kids and a husband.
Almost.
Thank you, no.
Almost.
You're 2 doors down. One in Yerushalayim and one in also Yerushalayim. So Baruch Hashem, life moves on with 2 granddaughters as well, right next to us. Okay, enough about me. AMIT Teitan. Bottom line, I couldn't be prouder of where I teach. I am not getting paid to say that. This is not a paid advertisement. This is coming from the heart. Everything I want to say tonight about AMIT is absolutely coming from the heart. I'll give you a little bit of detail. First, just like technical. The student body is made of about 420, 430 students. That's about 40% bigger than when I started almost 9 years ago. It is made up of, now for some of you who are aware of this, that in Israel, you go to school from 1st to 6th grade, you graduate. And then you go from 7th grade to 12th grade in another school. So this is 7th grade to 12th grade. There are each shichva at each grade level is broken down into kitot, into smaller groups. And there are each shichva, which there's 6 of them, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 12th, is broken down to 3 or 4 groups. And each level has special ed classes as well, with a director of special education. So you're talking just in very, again, technical terms, it's not even what they're doing with it, that there's a wonderful breakup and breakdown of all the different student body and how it is that they're being dealt with, and we'll get to that in a minute. As far as the population, as far as the most people walk in and say or think that's a completely religious school. It's run religiously. Everything is, it's Torah, mitzvot, and kashrut, and everything else. But until 9th grade, any student that lives in Ma'ale Adumim, unless there's a real reason to not accept them, has to be accepted into the school. So therefore, we have a population that is the kids that come from homes that are maybe less religious, some more religious. But even though you can tell when you're dealing with the students, nevertheless, it all meshes fine. It's not like there's the them and there's the us. There's really none of that whatsoever. And I would say that probably the biggest strength of the school has to be that from the top down, I'm going to talk about the administration in a moment, but from the top down, the 2 biggest goals they have is that absolutely every single student in the school, we're talking again, over 400 students, is looked at as an individual, is treated as an individual. The principal knows every kid by name, in most cases, many of the families, the teachers, the homeroom teachers in Hebrew is called the mechanech. The mechanech or mechanechet, unlike being just the teacher of their homeroom, is extremely involved in the kids' lives, including home visits a couple times a year. When there are problems within the family, they know about that. They're involved sometimes. But what is they want the best for every student? It sounds like a great motto. Like every school wants to. Imagine a school starts off, we want to really shoot for mediocrity this year. You don't do that. Everyone's, we want the best. Okay, that's fine. But tachlis, that's what happens. Are there exceptions? Of course there are exceptions. It's still a school with over 400 students, so not everything is going to be perfect. But it goes further than that. The staff. First of all, I have worked in many places. Hill Torah, Ida Crown, place where I've been in business for 17 years. I worked at the tour company, and with no disrespect to any other Seventh or staff I worked with in the past, is the best staff I've ever worked with. We're in touch. It's summertime. I'm in Chicago. We're in touch still. Some of us. Just it's wonderful. So I really enjoy. And the goal of the school is not just that the students should seek to do their best, but the professionals, the teachers, the hanhala, the administration also has the tools that they can be the best. Not just do educationally, but if there's a certain talent, and we're going to come to that, what happened with this book in a little bit, they're also very interested in seeing to it that that is encouraged. They're professional experience, excellence, but also life excellence. Because I would assume that the idea is that the better the staff is, the better that they'll be able to teach and be able to be involved with the students' lives. We have received, there's a local newspaper called Zman Ma'aleh. Except in the summer, there isn't a week that goes by there's not an article in the paper about, the paper's not like in Wildwood, Wisconsin, it's like, turn the page back and forth. It's a newspaper. There's the week that goes by that there's in some article about our school, an award they won, whether it's in sports, in Tanakh, in megatronics, in computer stuff. There's one group of kids that invented a machine or a robotic arm that solves Rubik's Cube. It won like #1 in Israel. We voted the best, we voted the best Dati school in Israel last year. We won the award. It was amazing. It was so well deserved. But how does that happen? And it truly starts at the top. Now, I'm not at the top, so I can say that. I'm nowhere near the top. You know how they pay teachers sometimes, sometimes they take out the tzedakah box on Friday and say, okay, here are a couple little pennies, have a Shabbat Shalom, I'm not at the top. There's a man who's actually family of Chicago roots. Some of you remember the Bogart family. Of course. So for those of you who remember Marty Bogart, his grandson, Daniel Berry, changed his name from Bogart, is the principal of the school. Many years ago, when business books became popular in the early 80s, you probably remember the book In Search of Excellence. Some of you probably read it, maybe you have it on your bookshelf. One of the groundbreaking books in really shaping what business would become. I don't know if you ever read it or not, but he really lives by this young man who has done amazing things for our school. And it's his philosophy. It's always pushing and pushing and pushing for the best. And it is not just pushing the kids, it's pushing the staff, it's pushing, just always wanting to be the top, to be the best. The goal is not the awards. The goal has never been the awards. It's nice. It's nice to get the awards and to get the recognition and to be on TV and to be in the newspaper, but that's never been the goal, the stated goal. What is my role in the school though? So I originally started as a teacher. What happened was I was doing a lot of private teaching. I still do a lot of private teaching in the neighborhood, but this particular year, going back 9 years approximately, I was doing a lot of teaching of students that were going up to 7th grade. And many of them were Anglos. And when they were going to go for their interview at AMIT, they asked me to come along because either the parent didn't understand Hebrew properly or the kid was still newish. So I kept going on all these interviews. So finally, the principal, who was a different person back then, said, it's ridiculous that you have to keep going and coming back. Why don't you just come here? At that time, I was teaching in the Yeshiva Tichonit. Sorry if I'm talking too fast, but I have stuff I want to make sure I get through before midnight tonight. You brought like Kiddush and Motzi and stuff. So bring a shofar. And so I don't remember where I was, but in any case, where was I?
You were going a lot of times to the school.
Oh, to the school. So finally I said, why don't you just come join us? And I was teaching, like I say, at the Yeshiva Tichonit, which is more of a yeshiva environment. And I thought about it for a little bit. And I said, okay, why not? Because I have a lot of students going there. And I started off in the English department teaching English as a teacher. After a few years of teaching in a classroom, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do more individualized instruction, which I was doing anyways in the neighborhood. And I went to Danielle and I made a proposal. And the proposal was to do in the school what I was doing in the neighborhood, which is working with kids. Olim, it could be from Ethiopia, it could be from Russia, it could be from the United States, didn't make a difference. Or kids that had a tremendous brain and just needed more. And I said, I want to be basically what we call here a resource center of one person. There was no tech and there's no, I don't even know how you say that in English. Like there's no job description almost for something like that in the network of AMIT. And he agreed like right away, which was fantastic for me. And then I had to build my own schedule. And we over the years, we got into routine already. We're at the beginning of the school year. I talk to teachers and I teach anything from English, history, Torah, Tanakh, Toshba, Ezrachut, which is civics, a whole range of things. And many times I'm helping kids prepare for Bagriyot or matriculation exams. I love it. I truly love it. And the rapport with the kids, what I experience is a microcosm of what the other teachers experience. Again, it's a regular school, and yes, you have the problem kids and you have the problem parents. I know parents aren't that bad, but you have issues. Of course, it's a school. It's not perfection. Like I say, when people come to Israel, they make a little, sometimes, you know, we complain sometimes in Israel. I say it's the promised land, not the perfect land. And it's true. Same thing is true with the school. It's not the perfect school, but if I had a choice now going, I was asked to go to different schools, not a chance I would leave AMIT. It's called AMIT Eitan. We actually had a few years ago an internal balloting of choosing a name. It's not just AMIT Eitan, the town is strength. It wasn't the name I chose, but I've gotten to really like it over the years because I think it has really shown the character of the school. So I'd say first, the bottom line of the school is that when Neshei AMIT or AMIT women, that's actually what it says on my the equivalent of a W-2 is when they get this, the numbers, I mean, it's whatever, it's called a 110, 106, but on the W-2 equivalent I get, it's Neshei AMIT. That's where my money comes from you. So is the whole network of schools in Israel, is my understanding of, besides wherever else they're getting the money from. I can't speak to the entire network, but I can speak to what goes on in my Dalet Amot, in my backyard. The money that is given to the network for the students, for the staff, for the running the school has been so well spent. Alvai, every organization should be able to do the same thing. It would make this world a heck of a lot better. Now, what does this have to do with books? I'll come to that in just a minute. But I think it's also important to understand that a little bit more about Ma'ale Adumim to understand why this school is so special. When we came to Ma'ale Adumim, well, first time we came was 2005, I think, something like that. No, yeah, 2005 is the first time we came. Matter of fact, I was taking groups to Israel, in some cases assisted by Warren Perlman, taking groups to Israel. And it started when Rabbi KJ, Rabbi Frank Schultz, I got a message once. I've been the rabbi for like 5 or 6 years already. And on my home answering machine, someone left me a voice note. That's a voice message that said, "Hi, we're having a bris. It's gonna be at 6 o'clock at Rabbi Frank's shul." Okay, it's fine. I'm proud, very proud. In any case, so again, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, this is great. Okay, Debbie, help me out. This is what happens when you travel, I guess. In any case, you do. I don't remember either. Okay, so Ma'ale Adumim, right? So we first came in 2005. I was bringing groups. Yes, there we go. Okay, roll the tape, but bringing groups. And every time I came with a different group. It started at the beginning of the Intifada, and I started to bring just a few people wanted to go. And I said, even if we stay in a hotel room for the week, I don't care. We're just going. Eventually, things then got calmed down. They didn't calm down, then they calmed down, and they didn't calm down. But when they calmed down, my beloved wife Andy said, you know, in car you're going, let's do groups of families. So I started taking families, and every time I would take a group to Israel, I put on the itinerary another community to see, just to see, you know, not just for myself, but other people might be interested in Aliyah to kind of whet their appetite. So we got to the usuals, Beit Shemesh, Ramat Beit Shemesh, Modi'in, wherever else. And then one of the last ones I was putting together, so the guy on the other side said, why don't you, I'll put Ma'ale Adumim on the schedule. I said, I don't know what Ma'ale Adumim is, where it is either. He said, how can you not know a city that's next to Yerushalayim that has 38,000 people? I said, yes, it's easy because I have no idea. And I was pretty good at geography of Israel. Fine, we'll go see Ma'ale Adumim. I didn't know a thing about it. When we got into Ma'ale Adumim, So there was a man, Guido Nariel, who at the time was in charge of anyone coming potentially for Aliyah to give them a little tour. We got on our bus and he drove us around Ma'ale Adumim. Within 40, and I'm not exaggerating, 45 minutes later, I knew we were going to live there because I had everything we were looking for at the time. I'm not going to go into details. This is not a story of my life. Maybe it is. But we decided we were going to stay there. Among the things it had was our youngest, Eliana, was going to be starting high school at the American level, getting 9th grade, even though 7th grade. At Sia, she went to school there, for those who know that network. And it had everything we wanted. And I didn't really know a lot about the schools at the time. And I started to learn and see different things. AMIT at the time, when I first made Aliyah, that school and one of the schools' name I will not mention, had a reputation. The other school, which is we still say grammar school. I'm the only person I think it's such a Chicago thing. I say it in Israel. I said, well, I went to grammar school. I said, what's grammar school? Okay, it's Yisodi, elementary school. Thank you. This elementary school had a reputation that if you were religious, you didn't go there. And over time, and they got to such an extent that if families were thinking of sending their kids there, they get the calls, you're not going to go there, you'll be ostracized. Over time, things changed. And thank God, I'm proud to say that when people come to me to help make a decision where to send to school, I highly recommend that school. For certain families, it's absolutely perfect. AMIT had a different reputation. It wasn't, I got there in 2009. So this is going back maybe to 2008 or 2007. Unfortunately, the police were there a lot. They visited the school quite often. There were a lot of problems. It wasn't the fault of the administration. It just had to do with what was in the water, I guess, those couple of years. There were a lot of problems. And a man, Victor Weitzman, came in. He shaped up the place. There were only about 260 students at the time. We're almost double that now. And then, like I say, Daniel Berry came in. There was another person between him, and Daniel came in. And it's been, the reason I'm mentioning this is, it's not just like this is how it's always been at AMIT. It's basically since I walked in the door, I couldn't say that with a straight face. It's been evolving over years, and it is beautiful to see the growth. What I also like to see is when it has to do with, and every school has to deal with discipline, when they've had to deal with disciplinary issues, if it's a major infraction, it's not like, well, we'll see, well, their parents give money to this, there's none of that. It's action is taken immediately. There was just the big thing in Israel is, depending what grade level you're in, you take a trip, what's called the Tiyul Shnati, or your annual trip. Depends how long it is and where you go, but the later in school you are, or the grade level you are, the longer the trip is, the farther it is. And obviously there's certain red lines, smoking, you bring alcohol along it, and they did catch a couple kids recently, a couple months back, enjoyment. And they were gone the next morning. They put them in a cab at the parents' expense, and from the far north, and sent them back home to Ma'ale Adumim. But when there's things that aren't major infractions, the way I've seen it, it's been very good. There was a couple of things that happened recently, and not to go into details. I'm mentioning this because I don't want to paint this beautiful rosy picture that everything is perfection. But when it's not perfect, they do know how to deal with it. I mentioned that one of the roles I had in the school and still have was to help students who need extra help. But I took it a little step further, and what I did was I had a group of boys that how do you say it? To accompany from grades. I used to speak, it's terrible, by the way, it happens to me all the time. I'm speaking in English, I don't remember the word. I've actually had to, sad to say, I've had to look up words. I accompanied these students from grade 7 to grade 12 for all those years. One, actually, I started with in 5th grade. So they were like my boys. Everyone knew they were my group. They were elite from all Anglo, some were Canada, United States. And what I did was at certain points, besides having them out of the class and teaching the curriculum, part in class, part out, I would be in the classroom just to translate or explain what was going on. One of those classes was a class in literature, Sifrut. Without going into all the details, because I won't, because it'll be very boring. There's certain requirements of, like any school, but in the Ministry of Education, certain topics that have to be taught, what has to be taught, what the materials to be taught. And Sifrut, or literature, is one of those. It's not, reading Jane Eyre, but it is reading specific things. You have 2 years of it. You have projects to do. There is a Bagrut, a matriculation exam in it as well. So in the first of those 2 years, so I'm going back now a few years, I walked into a class and I started to explain to the students about what was going on with the teacher, Yael, was teaching. She was teaching a topic called PUT. What are PUT? So for those of you who think you don't know what they are, you all know what they are. Yigdal, Adon Olam, the Chadodi, Yetit Nefesh, almost all the Zmirot you might sing or don't sing on Shabbat, those are all PUTim. It's called in English liturgical poetry. It sounds so boring. We're going to read liturgical poetry now. It sounds boring. So, okay, I'm listening with a half an ear, and she's explaining this particular piyut that was from the Machzer for Yom Kippur, and I'm listening because I have to translate, but then all of a sudden I just kind of stopped translating, and I'm just listening to her, and I'm finding it fascinating. I just thought they would just write what was coming from the heart, but there were rules. I'm talking now the style of Middle Ages. People like Danish Ibn Labrat and Rabbi Yehuda Levi and Ibn Ezra, these names that you will know. And if you're not familiar with some of them, when you look next time in your Siddur or look in your Zmirot on Shabbat, you'll see the names in many cases written by so-and-so. HaKalir, who wrote many of the Kinot and Tisha B'Av, for Tisha B'Av. And as I'm listening, there's rules and how you write it and what has to match, and there's something called Delet B'Soger and all these other things. This is fascinating. So I decided to try my hand at it. And I wrote a piyut. And I took my name, Ze'ev Meir, and I wrote an acrostic. Zayin Aleph Bet Mem Aleph Yud Reish, and I wrote. And I brought it to the teacher, and she asked me who wrote it. And I said, yes. She liked it. I thought that was really good. She made a couple of changes, made a couple of suggestions, but she really liked it. Okay. And I had it on a plain piece of paper, And I said, well, I guess if I can do one, I could try another one. So I tried another one, and it just was out of control. I couldn't stop writing. And there were 3 teachers in the school. I have to mention the names because they're critical in my life, Yael, Hadass, and Eliyahu, who were there to help me not only to make sure that the structure was correct, but the words I was using was correct. And basically what the piyut you are doing is you're using not just poetry, but you're taking psukim from Tanakh, ideas from the Talmud, other places, and weaving them in. Sometimes it's a single word, sometimes it's an entire phrase, and it mixes in with the statement you're trying to do. So for example, some of the topics I wrote about relationship with Hashem, I wrote about Yerushalayim, I wrote about my father, I wrote about Shalom. There are a lot of emotional piyutim, a lot of emotion into the piyutim, at least the ones I wrote. And I wrote, like I say, in the style of the Middle Ages. The first volume, which I came out last year, was written in dedicated to my father's memory, came out a few months after he passed away. The second volume, which is on the table, came out just about 2 months ago, not even. And there's a teeny little story behind this. And that is that some of you, I know, many of you here know the Lifshitz family, Colonel Oscar Lifshitz Shalom. So his son, Martin, and their daughter-in-law, Rhonda, live 2 doors down from us, actually the building our daughter lives in. And when they had a son whose name was Avraham. And when Avraham was born 17 years ago exactly, he was born, they knew before he was born he was going to need to have a heart transplant. At 6 years old, he had a heart transplant. And the prognosis, they didn't really know. He passed away shortly before his 16th birthday. As a neighbor, as his teacher, as his mentor, as his friend, I mean, we were all devastated. I was over at the house with body before Hatzalah or Amada, Magid Vadidom even came to take him. That's how close we were, and I am still with the family. During Shiva, I decided, because this is also how I cope sometimes with things in life, I like to write. So I wrote a piyut with his name, which is unfortunate, it's very long. Victor Chai Avra, it's the longest piyut I wrote, I think. And his middle name is Chai. And kind of fell into my head a few 8-10 months ago that the next volume, when I would come out with it, would contain 18 piyutim, and it'd be in his memory. And that's what I did. Every piyut that I wrote, and I'm going to go through it with your permission in a minute, I'm going to pass one out. Every piyut that I wrote comes with a little bit of an explanation and a picture that has to do with the piyut. And just as an example, the very first one in the book, which has to do with Avraham, Alav Shalom, is a desk looking at a window, empty desk, empty window with a light, just representative of Bahanar Einenu. Child isn't there anymore. And that's what I tried to do to make sure that the pictures match to the piyut. I want to, like I said, with your permission, just take me to a couple of minutes. Just happen to have a copy of one. I'm going to read it. If you don't mind passing it around here, there. Actually need, oh no, I don't have fine. Okay, so it is. Okay, and I will explain to you what this is in general before I read it. I'll read it twice. Read it once just straight through, and then once I'll give some general explanation, not word for word. You'll also notice that the bottom of the page there are footnotes. Everything that has to do with the pasuk is footnoted, and everything that has to do with and needs an explanation has an explanation. It is not simple Hebrew, I will tell you that. Some is straightforward, you'll understand. If your Hebrew is even just halfway decent, you'll understand a large part of this. I'm sorry, I hope they're not. I hope they're not. Actually, I hope there aren't. There's a nice amount of people here. Baruch Hashem. Very nice turnout considering so much is going on in the community right now. Lots of mazal tovs. So, the basic idea behind this piyut. Need more? Okay. The basic idea behind this piyut is I imagine what it would be like after 120 years, I know it's 120 years, to stand before God. So I will read it, like I said, just once straight through, and then I'll come back and just pick it up in just general explanation. It's called Beheref Ayin, which means in the blink of an eye. Beheref Ayin omed b'shafrir zevulav, pachad kishero'eh hashofet v'gan shiluchav, kolot uvrakim usrafim omdim mima'al, הגיע העת לענות על כל מעל ומעל. אל מי אנוסה לעזרה ביום פקודה? ארום בזעיר בינתי ומלא חרדה. הספר נפתח, המכתב מכתב ידי. אוי לי מיום הדין, לכלום נחשב נדודי. בצלך תסוכוני, אני רק אנוש. עשה עמדי חסד ותימנע מלענוש. Basically it means as follows. In the blink of an eye, I stand in the heavens, filled with fear, as I see the ultimate judge and his messengers, the angels. There's all these sounds and angels above, and it's time for me now to answer for all my mistakes in life. Who will I turn to for help on this day, this judgment day? I stand naked with nothing to help me and filled with fear. The book is open, meaning the book of my life, and the writing in the book is my own handwriting of what I've done my whole life. Woe is to me for the judgment day. All my actions in this world are next to nothing. Please, I then turn to God and say, please protect me in your shadow. I'm only human, and please do chesed with me and don't give me a punishment. That's the general idea behind this piyut. Some are a little bit more intricate, some are a little bit more. There's one here about my father, Allah Shalom, with the cross to give his name. And there's all these different, I would say when I do write, it tends to be a little bit more from the heart as opposed to from the mind. I try the mind also, of course, but I want it to feel like it's coming from the heart. It can take me sometimes 20 minutes to write something, and sometimes it'll take me weeks. Depends. Some ideas just pop into my head. I sit down right away and I write, and I then try to work with that. But what does that do to school? So they encourage. It was born there. No, it was much more than that. So when I first started to write, so I started to print them up. I typed them up, and I went to the principal, Daniel, and he deserves the biggest yasher koach for this. I went to him and I said, I want permission to make some copies here in the school. I had like, I don't know, 10, 12 piyutim at that point. And I'd like to, if we can bring them into the sifrut class, the literature class, and maybe, just use it for examples. He says, absolutely no problem. Let's sit down. So what I do wrong now? He said, what you want to do is fine. Remember, I told you, in search of excellence. This really seems to be his motto. You're going to publish a book. Honest to God, that was the farthest thing from my mind. I never thought about that. And he even took out a pen and paper, and he said, here's how it's going to look. This side's going to have drawings. He said drawings with pictures. This side's going to be drawings with explanation. This side's going to be the piyut. Here's your footnotes. Go for it. I said, go for it. I don't have the money to. He says, we'll pay. Of course, that was before COVID. That they didn't have money, but that's a different story. But Baruch Hashem, they still participated. But the idea being that he pushed me, they were very involved, and I had the logo of AMIT here. Even the second volume, which is not sponsored by AMIT, it's still in there because of Hakarat Tov. I believe that AMIT is, the book was born, both books and the future ones who have already more on the horizon, Bezrat Hashem, was born in AMIT. So I would say living proof It's not just about excellence for their students, it's about the staff as well. And that's how the book was born there. I'm gonna spend another, I don't even have a watch, oh, I can look on here, what time is it? Okay, okay, I have a few minutes, yes? Yes, okay, good. I'll try to wrap up soon. This other book, which was not planned this way, but just coincidentally came out like 2 weeks later. I want to explain what this book is. It's called The Three Images. First, as an aside, when people who don't know me ask how long was I at the show, I say 43 years. He said, you don't look old enough to be a rabbi at 43. I said, well, I didn't say I was a rabbi for 43 years. I said I was in the shul. I mean, therefore, before my bar mitzvah. Like 10 years old, we went from North America, Holland, we came to KJ. That was it. So when I became rabbi, it was in 1999, and it was in June. So one of the first big tests of the rabbi is going to be, I mean, no Ra'im, right? Just the highlight, you got to make sure you have. So it's 9 speeches. A rabbi does what he's supposed to do. Sometimes it's 9 speeches from the time of Rosh Hashanah until you finish Simchat Torah. There's 9 speeches at least you can give. Out of those, the most difficult one probably for the rabbi is the night of Yom Kippur. Why? Because everyone just finished eating, they're stuffed. Got 25 hours of this, we go up and down, open the ark, close the ark, open the ark, close the ark, up and down. Rabbi says, turn to page this. Okay, the last thing they want to really hear necessarily is a speech. So I figured I had to do something different. So I had this idea that if I would present to the shul 3 images of things that I had seen myself or was aware of, either recently or in the past, that and the lesson from each one of those to make it more like it's tactile, it's almost there, they can really feel it, that'll make a difference. Maybe they'll penetrate. So evidently it was really popular, and people told me afterwards I didn't fall asleep. Now they said I liked it. They said I liked it. So I said, okay, if it was a formula that worked, why not try it again? So I tried it again the 2nd year and the 3rd year. So by the 4th or 5th year, people had already asked me, so what are your images this year? And of course, I never would say before the 9 o'clock trade. And so by the end, I had 10 years of 3 images each. So 30 images, 30 stories, 30 lessons. It's called True Stories and Lessons for Introspection. That's the subtitle. And even in the introduction, I say it's not really meant to be read straight through. It's short. It's a small book. But it has short 1, 2 page, 3 page stories. I'm going to read one short one to you if it's okay. And you'll get the flavor of what it's about. For those of you who grew up in KJBS, will definitely remember one of the stories having to do with the night the lights went out on Kol Nidre. I have not forgotten that. Every single Kol Nidre, I think about that. You were 14 years old, maybe, I don't remember. Something like that, but you don't forget that night. There are a number of stories that from people in Chicago you may find familiar. Others you'll have for sure never heard of. I want to read one. It is, some of them are very personal stories, are. And I had, before we came to Chicago on this trip, we stopped for a couple of days in Toronto. My mom, she should live and be well. So in Toronto. And I haven't really, I've been there 22 years. So we stopped there with one goal, to see family. So on Tuesday night this week, past week, I sat around the table with a large amount of my first cousins, and I thank God a lot of first cousins. And I read the following story. I'm gonna read it to you because it's about my Zaidi, my mother's father, and it was about their Zaidi. So it's called My Zaidi's Watch. Now the title, the chapters don't have titles, it's just called Image 1, Image 2, Image 3. But in my head, it's called My Zaidi's Watch. And one day when I reprint Bezrat Hashem, I'll put titles as well. The final image, because there were 3 each year. The final image is my Zaidi's watch. Although I grew up in Chicago, much of my family, including my maternal grandparents, lived in Toronto. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a year at most, but the relationship between them and our Chicago family was a close one. In the days before internet, email, and cell phones, our method of communication was letters and occasionally a phone call. While we all built a strong relationship with them, I was especially close to my Zaidi, Shmuel Posner, Zichrono Livracha. In May of 1973, the inevitable happened. My grandmother passed away. Then in February of 74, my Zaidi passed away. I was devastated by the death of my Bovi, as she was the first person close to me who would die. With the death of my Zaidi, I was crushed. It was the end of an era on my mother's side of the family. Although I was only 15 years old, there was a gaping hole in my heart that I felt would never heal. My family flew to Toronto for my Zadie's funeral. From the airport, we went straight to his apartment. I began to look around the rooms. I could hear his voice, feel his love, and see his mark everywhere. Then I walked into his bedroom. On his bed was his clothing, and I realized that those were the last things he had worn on this earth. Next to his clothing was his watch. I picked it up and held it in my hand. It was at that moment that I felt the gravity of his loss so acutely, and I began to wail inconsolably. I held his watch in my hand for what seemed like an eternity, and I cried like never before. I did not want to let go of it. As a matter of fact, for some inexplicable reason, it was as if I couldn't let go. Perhaps in my youthful mind, letting go of his watch was like letting go of Zadie. Over the past many years, I've thought back to that day and that moment. What was it about that watch, and how did I become so close to my grandfather, who lived at nearly 850 kilometers away? As I got older, I understood that the watch represented the time my Zadie was here on this earth. And at the moment when he died, his time stood still. In a certain sense, so did mine, with all the memories of him frozen in time. But what about the long distance between us and the infrequent visits? How was it that, in spite of the distance and separation, we had become so close? Then it dawned on me. Love doesn't know anything about distance. No matter how far apart we were, it was the love that bound us together. While there was a physical distance between us, there was absolutely no spiritual distance between us. I took this idea to the next step, and that is the reason why his watch is the third image. The same is true for our relationship with Hashem. The times that we had a Beit HaMikdash, we visited Hashem 3 times a year through the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, pilgrimage. Nowadays, some see him frequently, while others see him infrequently. However, for all of us, Hashem is not physically present, and in that sense, he is very distant. In a spiritual sense, he is very close to us. Love knows no distance. Hashem is always with us and as close as we choose. It is essential to realize that Hashem is as close to us as we let him be. That is what I learned from my Zadie's watch and what I think about on Yom Kippur. Let us remember that we are always under Hashem's watchful gaze. Let us remember to think about our shortcomings and how to change them to positives. We must always keep in mind that Hashem loves our efforts, always sees our positive deeds, and embraces us with fatherly love. And finally, let us remember that love knows no distance. My Zadie's watch. Tough. For those who are interested in the book, they're all for sale. The goal tonight was not selling books. The goal was AMIT. It's nice to be able to do this for anyone who wants. $18 a piece. I can sign. Actually, the book is free. The signature is $18. Actually, I'll tell you a funny, really fast, funny story. There is a person in the neighborhood who was visiting his family, and something made a joke. Last year, offhand a joke, something about he wanted my signature on something. It's a joke. I said, it'll cost you $100. They said, okay, funny. Okay. Then he came again, he wanted to buy some books. So he says, I want your signature on some books on a book. I want to give you, on 2 books. So I want to give you $100. Okay, so I gave him a couple as a joke, it's fine. Then I opened it up. He gave me $500, $600, $700 just towards the whatever to print the book. So I came back and I said, I cheated you. I'm supposed to charge you another 4. You're supposed to give you 4 more books or 5 more books just to sign. You only pay for the signature. So the signature is the part that costs. So again, I want to thank Beth. I want to thank Melissa. I want to thank the Looking Scenes. Thank you very much, everyone who's here tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer after. I'm sure some people will have to skedaddle. Feel free. You can keep the page if you want. Just leave it up here. Whatever you want to do. And I guess I'll sit over here. If anyone wants to sign. All right.
Thank you so much. You were really inspirational.
Thank you.
And you really tell us why we will work so hard for me for all these years. And we really are all helping to make a difference.
Or Hashem. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for opening up your home. Please join us for a beautiful spread that you put out. And I just want to remind everyone that this Sunday we have Daniel Silva. Is at 11 o'clock Central Time, and it's going to be virtual. And the books, his a new book coming out. I don't think it's supposed to really be released to next week, but we're waiting for our shipment. So it will be, if it gets to my office before Shabbos, it'll be before Shabbos. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Give it an outline.